Welcome to WebRTC Live. In WebRTC Live, we cover the latest technical topics and business use cases for WebRTC and live video. As always, this episode is brought to you by WebRTC.Ventures, leading integrators of WebRTC video into your custom application.
Welcome back to WebRTC Live. I'm your host, Aaron Syme, co-founder and CEO at WebRTC.Ventures. We're a custom design and development agency specializing in building live video applications, here to help you take your application live. You can learn more about us at WebRTC.Ventures. For today's episode of WebRTC Live, I'm proud to welcome back Sean DuBois. Sean is founder of the Pion project. And today we're going to talk also about his latest community venture, WebRTC for the Curious. You can find out more about that at WebRTC.com. So Sean, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm always enjoy coming on here. You let me talk about all the little things that I find interesting and stuff like that. So it's always a blast.
I always enjoy talking with you, and I know our viewers definitely enjoy hearing about those little things that keep you interested. And that's that's a great segue perhaps to what we'll be talking about today with WebRTC for the Curious. So the things that have made you curious about WebRTC. But maybe let's start briefly with your project, Pion, and tell us a little bit, maybe for anybody who hasn't heard, the quick introduction to what Pion is, and then any updates you want to share about that.
So Pion is a Go implementation of popular RTC libraries. So first we started out with a Go implementation of Turn, with the idea that let's evaluate what makes it difficult to run Turn server right now. So instead of just providing like a monolithic Turn server that you just drop on a server and run, instead it's like Turn as an API. So you call like turn server.start, and then you set callbacks for like authenticate, and you can set your own logger and stuff like that. Like it was designed for more of that like code as configuration ethos instead of dropping on a monolithic server. So first we did that. And then since we'd written a Turn implementation, we're like, we decided to write a full WebRTC implementation. And if you've used WebRTC in the browser, it's just the pure connection API, but except you can run it in Go. And so you can call, add track, create transceiver, set remote description, all those things that you expect. But now you have it just in a whole different language, and the language that's really, really portable. So we have people that deploy to servers. We have people that do desktop applications. They do little conferencing things. We have people that are doing like teleoperation, and then we even have like people that do like mobile and like set-top boxes. So it's kind of like we just wanted to build something that was really flexible. And the goals of the project changed as it went on, but that's where it started out.
And what got you interested in WebRTC from the start?
So I worked at a startup in Chicago called Lightstream that was doing like remote compositing. So it's like if you were in Texas and I was in Ohio, and like we wanted to combine our video remotely to do like co-streaming, and this was, now it's been like 6-7 years, but like at the time, like it was a huge deal to be able to co-stream with people, play a video game together. Streaming was getting bigger and bigger. And we started out doing the RTMP stuff, and just with the latency and the back pressure and all of these issues, it was obvious that WebRTC was something that we needed to use, and it was hard to figure out. We used a lot of tools that were available at the time, like they didn't fit with our current stack, and that was a lot of the motivation for why Pion is flexible, because like when you're building something, you make all these design choices, and then all of a sudden you have to fit this other piece of software in the system you've already designed. And it's very frustrating when you realize like, it's like things break at those integration points. So I was trying to like reduce the friction there. And then I had went to another job at Amazon, and I was working not on WebRTC. And I was like kind of worried. I'm like, my skills are gonna like kind of atrophy. And so I, with another person at that company, we kind of just sat down and like, let's build some WebRTC stuff. And he left the project after a month, and I just kind of stuck at it because I don't know, it was fun, and it was kind of a calling. Like it felt important to build this. It felt like people wanted it, and there were some cool open source projects that were using it, like Tor. And it's kind of just like, it's hard. Now I'm kind of stuck in this hobby, but I really enjoy it.
Well, in the world we live in today, I think it's a good hobby to have to be stuck on for sure. And I would say great technology to learn. The choice for Go.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit more about how
Yeah.
Go fit into that flexibility you were looking for.
Yeah. So when I looked around, it was kind of like where would be the most impact to build a WebRTC implementation? We already had like implementations in C and C++, so it didn't feel that like that was doing anything different. And then other stuff like Python and PHP, like the performance isn't there. So you'd have to, if you wanted to write an implementation in those languages, you'd have to do it in C, but then have like Python call into it. So that didn't feel right. And Go kind of hit that perfect spot where you could like have the performance and you could still write the whole thing. And then other things that came along got me really excited. So Go was designed to be like, it was designed at Google to be purposely easy to use. Like the idea was you have these new grads joining, you wanted them to be able to contribute quickly. And I was kind of inspired by that. Like WebRTC should be easy to use. And so you want an implementation that's easy to read, easy to learn. And so that became a big thing. And then also the memory safety. So if you remember like the SCTP security bugs, like none of those issues, like Go is memory safe. So you don't have like these whole class of issues that don't affect Go code, which really excited me. I think as security becomes more and more important, like people are going to be using Go and Rust and other things like that more. So those are the two big things. It was like, it's the performance, it's in the right place performance wise. It's easy to use. Like it's the language is like brutally simple, and the security side, like those became the big ones.
Nice. That's great. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing WebRTC developers these days?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, like what I've noticed is when I started, I thought, oh, it's that we don't have like implementations of WebRTC that work. And I was kind of like, I was thinking like, oh, I'll write this Pion implementation and it will fix everything and everyone will be happy. And I write it, and then I realize people are sending me the same questions that they're sending other WebRTC projects. And I'm like, well, I was very naive, and I was very like ignorant to think that I would figure it out when no one else can. And what I kind of realize now is I think it's more of an education issue, because you drop some WebRTC code out there and it just works, and all of a sudden, you go to someone else's network and the video doesn't show up and you don't understand why.
Right.
And it's because you don't have UDP connectivity. And what I'm starting to realize more and more is it's not just the software isn't like where it needs to be, but it's also the education side. So it's like I can build something with WebRTC, but then like when it breaks, I don't understand what's broken about it. Right. And so what kind of got me excited in these past 6 months is more the education side. And so that's what inspired WebRTC for the Curious. It's like this book about how WebRTC actually works, so you can go and debug things on your own. Because right now, like your choices are to discuss WebRTC and get ignored, Stack Overflow, and maybe you'll get an answer from me or Philip Hankey, and then that's pretty much it. And so, like I thought, like okay, like this will be better. Like people have something they can go and look at,
right?
And that was exciting. And then it's also inspired like some of the changes with Pine as well. So like in the V3, we have this concept of interceptors, where things like transport-wide congestion control reports and congestion control and NACs, instead they're pluggable. So the idea is you can spin up a peer connection that has nothing, or you can spin up a peer connection that only has forward error correction. And the idea is like that these things are little components that you plug into the public API. So you choose what you use, and it gives you a chance that you can go jump and look at just a file that's dedicated just to this single topic, so you can learn it. And you can opt in or opt out of that. Like I think that gives a lot of people, because it's not just like, does it work? It's also like, do I know enough to debug it? And do I know enough to be confident? Like there's nothing more frustrating than like your boss asking you why something doesn't work and you don't know enough to explain why. So that's what I'm trying to solve.
Nice. Yeah, and so you described it as a book, but it's WebRTC for the Curious.com, and anybody can go take a look at it. There's not a book that has to be purchased. This is open content essentially.
Yeah.
How has the process been building that so far? Has that been primarily you, or?
Yeah, I think I've written about like 90-95% of it, and it's pretty easy. Like it's all just on GitHub. So if people want to contribute or they see errors, like you just open up a PR, and when it gets merged and mastered, automatically gets deployed. So it's super easy. And then basically I just went on paternity leave in July, and I just sat on my phone and typed it. Like I didn't have it. I'm holding my daughter with one hand, and I didn't have any. It was either watch TV or write this book, and I didn't. I don't know, it's kind of like a bucket list item to get all this information out here. It's also for my own sake. Like I get asked the same questions like about Turn like every week. So now like I just send people a link and say like I wrote about it here. Like read this, and if there's a mistake, like we can improve it. But like it was like it saves me time, and I hope it's like a good gift to the community. And I had hoped that I could get more involvement from other WebRTC projects. I haven't been able to accomplish that yet. But that's kind of the goal. Like I'm hoping that I can build a community around it where, like instead of every WebRTC project answering the same questions, we all coalesce around this one thing. So like the book purposely doesn't talk about Pion, it doesn't talk about Janus. Like it just is general WebRTC, which some people find frustrating, but that's kind of like why it is that way.
Do you see having any sort of spin-offs of it or branches out of it, going to specific projects or Pion or other?
Yeah, some people had reached out to me about that, I'm torn because at one part, like I think like we could have like a something at the end of the book and saying like this is WebRTC for the curious, written by the authors of each project and stuff like that. And it's like a thin line to cross. That the competition between different projects and not even competition, but people are just excited about their own thing. Like and I don't want to step on anyone's toes, and I also want to keep people motivated to stay involved. So I thought about it, and I think I might end up going that way because I had hoped that if I keep it like a safe middle ground, that people would be involved, but people haven't been involved. So maybe that was the wrong choice. Maybe the wrong choice is to make it like a place where people can argue about like, the pros and cons of different SFUs, and that will get people excited. I don't know.
Well, I think there's a tremendous amount of value in having that safe middle space, as you described, kind of that base level. And then, maybe other things grow out of that, or eventually you have, Reddit arguments underneath each discussion of a project or something like that, right? But yeah, I think there's a lot of value in having that common ground, because I think that use our team as an example. We've been working in WebRTC the last 5 years. There's not a whole lot of information out there. There's certainly not that's not a fair way to say it. Perhaps there's not a lot of coalesced information, certainly. So, like you mentioned, that go to the Stack Overflow, and then of course, depending on how you're implementing it, if you're integrating a CPaaS, then it depends on their documentation, right? So it's hard, I think, I imagine for someone completely new to this to jump in and not be clear if they're looking at an example that's dependent on a particular CPaaS versus building something directly to the standard, and why would they go one route or the other? And there's a lot of base level information, I think, that you have to weed through before you get to the point of really knowing the right question to ask, perhaps, right? Yeah. So I think this site could help with that a lot.
Yeah, and the thing is a lot of the CPaaS is even their developers don't know exactly like the right words for WebRTC. So all of a sudden, a CPaaS, like their docs start teaching the wrong thing, and all of a sudden I've got people. Yeah, I'm amazed at how many things like that are just like accepted in the WebRTC community that are just like technically wrong, and just is what it is. But we're working to fix it, I guess.
Have you found, of the topics that you've written about so far on WebRTC for the curious, have you found any particular topics resonating most with people, or
I think the one that resonates most with people is the ICE and the connectivity issues, because I think it's that thing where you notice it going wrong really soon. Like you notice, oh, my peer connections don't connect, and so people are curious about it. They're like, why doesn't it connect? Like, how does it connect? Like, it seems magical to them. So I think people have really enjoyed reading about like NAT traversal and mapping and stuff like that. Like they've definitely enjoyed that. And then the one that I think people are curious about, but the one that I'm surprised people aren't as curious about is the media stuff. I had thought people would get more excited about like congestion control, and would have gotten excited about like, REM versus, sender versus receiver driven congestion control and stuff like that. And I realized that no one cares. Like all of like the WebRTC insiders, like we love arguing about it nonstop. And like, it's like, but I realized that everyone who's building stuff, they don't care at all. Like they're just like, I want it to work. And which is kind of funny. Like I think it's maybe because it doesn't break enough for people to care, but like,
Right.
but ice and like turn, that breaks nonstop for people. So they want to learn about it.
Yeah. I mean, figuring out why didn't the calls connect is obviously always first question someone setting up their first project is probably going to have. So that certainly makes sense. It's interesting. And I think again, it does depend too on the type of development work that you're going around this, and a lot of people starting out are abstracting some of that away through an API that they choose, right? So, are there? Speaking of codecs and media here, so we have a question from Michaela. Would like to know: does Pion support VP9 and H.265?
Yes. So with Pion, what you can do is we don't have a media pipeline per se. Like we just accept RTP packets, and you can set like what codecs you support in the media engine. So you could actually support things that don't even exist. Like you can say, my fake codec, and you can push your own RTP packets, and you can receive your own RTP packets. We don't have an H.265 packetizer though. So with VP9, VP8, and H.264, you can give us a stream of video and we'll chop it up and packetize it and put the FUA headers and stuff like that. But for H.265, we don't do that yet. So that's like the one thing you'll miss out. So you'll have to packetize the H.265 yourself, but then you can send it. The idea with Pion is that the media pipeline and the transport aren't tightly coupled, because we want to support protocol bridging, because we have a lot of people that do RTSP to WebRTC. We have a lot of people that do RTMP to WebRTC. And then we have a lot of people that do like screen sharing. And so they'll run they'll capture from X11 and then like send it over the wire. So it's like, it adds a little bit of some frustration, but like that's like the mental model to have, is like Pion doesn't care what you send or what you receive. Like you get these RTP packets and you can do whatever you want with them. So yes, but the only pain is packetizing H.265. But if you're interested in making a PR, I'd love to merge it.
Yeah, exactly. So since you're storing everything in GitHub, as you said earlier, just to be clear for our audience, anyone who would like to contribute to WebRTC for the Curious, they do that through a pull request on the GitHub project. So
yeah. And that's actually something. One of the things I talked about it with my talk, was that last week or 2 weeks ago? I kind of lose track of time.
Me too. I think it was 2 weeks ago, but I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's 2 weeks ago. Like with Pion, if you make a PR and you get merged, you're added as a member of the GitHub organization. And the idea is that only one other person needs to approve your PRs. So everyone has as much say in the community as I have. So like whenever I open up a PR, I have to send off a request from someone else, and I get a lot of rubber stamps. But and then same with other people. Like it's like even for like stupid things like bumping libraries and stuff like that. Like I want to create like a community where like people can be involved in it and like people can be members of it, because I think that especially when we get new voices in the project, they change things dramatically for the better. And then the other thing is I really encourage people to go build their own projects using Pion, and I love to promote them and talk about them. We have this thing called Awesome Pion, where it's like this whole GitHub repo of like cool things built with Pion. And at the end of every talk I give on Pion, I like to like show like a random 5 projects from it, and to get people excited. So if you're interested in getting involved like on the H.265 stuff, we'd love to have you.
What are some of your favorite projects lately from Awesome Pion?
I really love the cloud gaming one. So someone built like a remote NES emulator, and you send in your controls via data channels, and you get out video packets. And the thing that's most fun about it is the gaming aspect of it, are playing with someone else, because me and you will sit and we'll be playing like Bomberman together. And it adds a little bit of distraction playing Bomberman, but then we have like these very fluid conversations. It reminds me of sitting on the couch with someone and playing like a video game or like sitting on the couch and like, eating some food at the same time as having a conversation. It's way more natural than just like sitting and staring at someone. It's not as like, it's harder to do. And I've gotten more used to it, but I feel like humans aren't that way. We don't sit and just like stare at each other when we like talk. And so I really like that project. And then I really like Nico. What it is you run a browser on a remote instance, and then multiple people can access it. So like we can watch a YouTube video together, and we have a browser that's running remotely that we scroll, and it's running on like a remote DigitalOcean instance. But there's also really cool things like that's how I record conference calls. So I have that remote browser join the conference call and then do a screen capture. So like you can generically support like Jitsi, Zoom, Google Hangouts. It's like a conference call recorder that works for everything.
Nice.
So
that's great. What kind of mistakes have you made, sort of along the way? I think you said you wanted to share some thoughts there.
Yeah, I think one of the hard ones was especially like finding that balance between merging people's stuff and giving pushback. It's definitely like a one that I've had a hard time with. Is we had some, like in the very beginning, we had some people that wanted to make some very, very aggressive changes. And I kind of encouraged them, but at the same time, like it caused like a lot of churn in the project, and it caused a lot of things. So that's been the tough one with open source. And I think it's that's not like that exciting of an answer, but it's like, man, the interpersonal stuff with open source is very, very hard, like the bridging relationships.
Yeah.
Then the other one is it's the performance stuff I wish was better with Go. Like it has some of this tooling to like capture like, oh, like, this became a heap allocation, not a stack allocation. Even the project even suffers from that nowadays, where we like make like accidental copies and stuff like that. That's something that I want to improve. And yeah, in general, and also it's the this V3 release has been tough. It's like I've definitely had like these all of these features that have come in that I thought like different people would own, and it's figuring out like who's going to own what and how to like encourage them to do it. It's like this tough thing. Like I have to like nudge people to work on things, but if you nudge them too hard, then they leave. And again, it's like just those interpersonal things. It's like, yeah, the hardest part of all this is really not like the technical side. Like I would love to have, 12 hours a day to sit and program by myself, but I just don't have it. And it's like, how do you convince other people to get involved in your project and to feel ownership and to get excited about it? And sometimes it just doesn't line up like with what their motivations and what your motivations are.
Sure.
But I mean, you have it even harder. Like, I can't, like, at least with open source, like at the end of the day, like if I miss deadlines, like no one's, but like, yeah, having to run a company with employees and deadlines. I'm sure you're trying to empathize with me, but you're like, Sean, you have no idea how hard it is.
That's right. Come renegotiate a contract with me.
Yeah, I know. Then you're like, then you'll know how hard it is.
Right. Well, yeah, there's pros and cons to everything, of course, but yeah, I think it is hard to run an open source project for sure. It's it's not an expertise that I have personally, so I salute you for it, because obviously there's a technical component, there's a lot of people component there too, but I think it is a great opportunity because you've expressed a few different kind of needs, I think in this conversation for Pion, as well as for WebRTC for the Curious project, and both are open source. You have a great, very open model of accepting contributions to that. So for anyone watching this who is excited about WebRTC, looking to get more involved, this sounds like a great opportunity to me, and I salute what you're doing there for sure. For anybody thinking about, how they might want to jump in on that, are there any other particular aspects of WebRTC knowledge that you would like to see people contributing to WebRTC for the Curious?
Yeah, and one more call out before that is that my entire career, like all my jobs and everything else, has actually come from open source. So my job right now actually my employer found me through WebRTC for the Curious. So like, I encourage you. And then actually, I'm losing track now, but I think we're at 4. We've gotten 4 people who've gotten jobs because they've contributed to Pion, and then companies that use Pion go and hire them.
Yeah.
Which I think is really awesome. So like if you're, especially right now I know that it's really tough to get entry-level jobs in tech. Like if you're interested, I think getting involved in open source is a great place to show that, like, it shows not just your technical aptitude, but it shows your resilience, because you're willing to, deal with the back and forth of like figuring out like, is this acceptable to merge and stuff like that. So I would love for your first open source contribution to be Pion, but if that doesn't line up, like there's a lot of great WebRTC projects out there. One of my first open source contributions was to Janus, and that's how I got my started. And Lorenzo was very, very nice to me. I talked to him years later, and I'm like, he doesn't remember me at all, but I'm like, you stepped me through like multiple steps of PR, and like that's what made me fall in love with WebRTC and like this area. Was when I was at my first job, I contributed at Janus, and I really enjoyed it. So I encourage, if people are like, WebRTC is a great place to contribute, because it's a very small community, and there's a lot of work to go around. Like I feel like, doing stuff in JS land is a lot harder. There's all these frameworks and like all these companies behind it. The churn is much higher, but like here, it's a good place to be.
Yeah. Oh, and as an employer who's, it's hard to find people with WebRTC experience or also in a field like this where there's not always deep experience to be had to figure out who would be, good at doing this type of work. I definitely, +1, for working on a project like Pion, like WebRTC for the Curious, using that as a way to build some expertise when you're looking for that job. And certainly it's something, I know I would appreciate as an employer, because it's hard to find people with experience with this sort of work. So it's a great way to gain that experience, even before you find the employer to support it, essentially.
Yeah, but the only issue is all these open source people are way too idealistic. I know that I can be frustrating sometimes, because I love like doing things the right way, or I like I have like in my mind how I want it done. So I know like there's some people that are building stuff with Pion that are like, oh, I have to talk to Sean again and hear like his grand vision of API design, or his grand vision of stuff, and like you're frustrated. But to come back to like your so
yeah,
my
contributions.
My favorite contributions are the ones that I've seen the most successful. Is if you have an interesting idea of something you want to build with Pion, I encourage you to go build it, and go build it under your name. Like, I think contributing to Pion is great, but you should go build something, and when you hit bugs, contribute back. And building stuff under your own name and your own brand is the best way to for your own happiness. It's way more motivating to push to your own repo than to one that like. Because the truth is, like, you're not going to get as much credit for pushing to Pion as you will to your own stuff. And so I encourage people to do that and like own your own thing. It's more exciting. You get more credit for it. And then when you hit bugs, I encourage you to then come and contribute back to Pion and be like, hey, like I did this little thing, and I found that is the best way to keep people motivated. And then for the book, I think just getting people's feedback and opinions on what can be better. Like there's the 2 chapters at the end haven't even been started yet. And I would love for someone to come and do them, but I think it's unrealistic to expect someone to, like spend, 5 to 10 hours working on something that, if you really enjoy doing that, I would love to have you, and I'd love to give people right access and they can go do it. But I think it's unlikely to happen. But I think the best thing is go read the book and then make a long list of everything I got wrong. Because I think like that's easy for people. People like doing that. I don't mind it. Like after 10 years of being told I'm doing wrong in open source, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Well, you're that's the resiliency of open source projects, right? That you were talking about earlier, building that up.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Like it's tough. I remember I mean, I'll be honest. My feelings still get hurt all the time when people say like, "Oh, Pion, like I can't do this, I can't do that. It's bad here, it's bad there." Like I won't pretend like it doesn't affect me. I think it affects everyone, but like doing open source, it's still like then going to the politics of work. It's so much easier. Like it's just because like open source people just flat out insult you because they don't work with you, they don't know you, like they don't care. But at least at work, like you're like friends with someone, so you're not going to be like your stuff is crap. But
right. Well, Sean, really enjoyed our conversation. We should wrap up, unfortunately, but always enjoy having you on WebRTC Live and seeing you at the virtual conferences these days. But any other topics or points you want to bring up before we wrap up?
No, and thank you for having me on again. Like, I sincerely appreciate that you let me talk about what I like to talk about. There's a lot of like things you'd out there, like they like review your slides beforehand and cut out a few, but you've done a great, well, at least for me, like I'm very happy, and I look forward to coming on because I get to talk about the stuff I enjoy.
Well, and I enjoy having you, so we'll definitely have you back again soon. So yeah, thanks again for joining us, Sean. Really appreciate it, and for all that you do for the WebRTC community. For those watching, don't forget, go check out WebRTCforthecurious.com and the Pion project. And Sean and I both look forward to seeing what you come up with based on those, and maybe a listing on the Awesome Pion in the future is in your future. So thanks again, Sean. For those watching, thanks for taking the time to join us today. If you want to join our future events, you can follow us on Twitter at WebRTC.Ventures, or join our email list at WebRTC.Ventures, and we'll let you know about our future episodes of WebRTC Live. The next one is November 11th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have Natalie Silvanovich from Google. She'll join me to talk about security in WebRTC. She just presented a really interesting talk on security in WebRTC at the IIT RTC conference, where Sean was also a couple weeks ago. And I'm sure you'll enjoy hearing what Natalie has to share there. So please join us for that. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again, Sean. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody. Let's make it live.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.Ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services, and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.